Hey, it's my friends. Well, Good Friday morning, and Good Friday it is for those of you that are acquainted with the Easter season and the various things that take place. This is called Good Friday um, for the people of the Christian faith because this is the Friday on which we remember the crucifixion of Jesus, the death of Jesus. And then Easter is the rising of Jesus. That's probably a weird thing for me to be talking about on this school video, but it's an important part of the spiritual resource, the spiritual pillar for some of the people. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you on Good Friday and wish you a happy Easter. Wow, we have a surprise interview for you today, and if you've read the title, you already know who it is, but really excited to have Leah Whetsell here. She was a teacher in Bellevue as a math teacher at the high school for 4 years, a few years ago, and is now teaching at a really interesting place out in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And you'll be excited to hear what Ms. Whetsell's been up to, as well as all of the challenges she's facing in her new home in Arizona. I just want to give you a mental health tip for the day from the Relational area in the INSPIRE acronym. The R stands for Relational. And one of the things that has been useful in my family, in fact, my wife spent all last night filling out, writing out, addressing cards to people for Easter. I don't know that you want to do them for Easter, but one of the skills certainly that a lot of people aren't really acquainted with, young people growing up, is that of actually writing a letter, addressing it, putting a stamp on it. These are kinds of things that might be kind of fun to do as a family, to think of some relatives or some friends that you know and spend some time writing a letter and putting it in the mail and talking about this form of communication relative to the communication that we have now where we can text people or FaceTime them. It's a completely different thing. It's a learning experience. It's good intellectually to talk about the history. It's good relationally. And you can write down some of the things that you're going through in the COVID quarantine, and that can be good for you emotionally as well. So it's a multifaceted one, but especially relationally, everybody likes to get a letter in the mail. All right, let's get on to our interview with Leah Whetsell today. She was gracious enough to spend some time. You'll see that she's not living in the same place that we're living. It snowed yesterday while I was talking to Miss Whetsell. So there's a little bit of difference of climate, but a similar experience in the quarantine. So let's get on to our interview with Leah Whetsell.
All right, here we are. We are on an interview with not a Bellevue person, but a former Bellevue person. Can you believe it? It's Leah Whetsell, who taught at Bellevue for how many years? Were you there?
About 4 years.
I thought it was 4, yeah. For 4 years, she was a math teacher at the high school. And wow, she's not, look at that view. She is not in Iowa anymore. I'm wearing a hoodie because I am recording this on Thursday right after it snowed, if you guys saw the snow. And Ms. Whetsell, you are not in the snow. Where are you? And update people on your life.
I am currently in the Phoenix area. I am just northwest of the Phoenix metropolitan area, just kind of the edge of the city. So I wish you can't really see it, but I have beautiful mountains in my back view here and all that. So I'm in Arizona. We did have a cold snap also. It did drop to about 75 today. So
okay, the interview's over. It was really nice talking to you. And yeah, I'm glad you have a view of the mountains from your pool. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, from my pool. So I am teaching high school math still at a school called Independence High School. It is a large school. It's about 2,200 students. And in addition to being a math teacher, I've also started to implement with some colleagues some programs that involve mindfulness and awareness because our student population does struggle. We are very much an inner city school, a Title I school. We have a very large refugee population, immigrant population, and where we're situated is kind of a hot point where we have, we're probably one of the most transitional, I guess you could call it, schools in the whole Phoenix metro area.
Wow.
Just where we're located. So there's a lot of, resource issues and behavioral issues. And so we're trying to find other ways to deal with them. So working with my dear friend Molly Schreiber and people in Dubuque, we've started to push this to the secondary level and using some of those techniques and trainings to bring that to the high school. So I am so excited that you want to talk about how to be mindful and be cognizant of that. So I'm sorry, my dog is
Yeah. Is that your dog?
talking. So
it's time for my swim. It's time for my hike in the mountains on the sunny day.
Yeah,
that's
it's
okay.
funny.
We love dogs.
I do meetings with my students too. They're so who's in the house? I'm like,
yeah.
It's just me in my classroom. Sorry, but yeah.
So unique to your situation, since you're dealing with an at-risk population and a big population, but you were already working towards some of the mindfulness and social emotional stuff. What are the struggles you're facing with that right now, and how are you addressing them in your school?
Really, right now, there goes the other one. So
that's
right
the best part so far.
They're so entertaining. Hey, here. So usually I have Cheez-Its and I bait them. Right now, it's really our biggest focus on is, so we went into our spring break the week of St. Patrick's Day, and at the middle to end of that is when we got the word that we would not be reopening. So there was kind of a giant rush to, number one, our biggest thing is to meet the basic needs of our students. Close to 90% of our students rely on the school for their daily meals.
Wow.
And things like that. So that became our first priority, is reaching out to those kids we know that aren't in such a safe situation, and food, shelter, those kinds of needs. So that was our first act. So spring break for administration and educators was identifying those individuals. So that was our first spring to action.
Wow. So you had at least a couple of days on spring break before you had to get back to it, but really not enough to prepare for this. Huh?
Right. We kind of had the idea. I mean, when I packed up for spring break, I packed a few extra items knowing that this may be coming down the pipe at us. So we were preparing.
So I've heard from a number of teachers just in my wanderings through the interworld and on Zoom meetings about the challenges of reaching those kids who are probably the ones that need to be reached the most. You're facing those same kinds of challenges, I assume?
Yes, very much so. We are not a one-to-one school. We had enough Chromebooks on campus that could reach every student. So it became how do we reach all these students and tell them how to get technology into their hands so we can get a hold of them. And so each of us have a homeroom. And so we were responsible for the 30 some kids. I have 35 in my homeroom. So it was my job to make first contact with those individuals, because a lot of them don't have working phone numbers listed with the office. So I got creative. I went the text message and Snapchat route. I started sending friends to get friends. I know who hangs out with you, so I'm going to tell them to have you check a message or do something. So I had to get creative and, start sending text messages to people that I know could get a hold of them.
That's a great thought that I had not had, is why not talk to the kids can talk to the kids, even if you can't talk to them directly, and maybe connect with them. Okay,
another hurdle we have is we speak about 85 different languages at our school. So a lot of times, even getting a hold of mom and dad, they won't pick up their phone or understand a voice message.
Wow.
So texting those home phone numbers, they can at least hand the phone to the student. Because if you say, Independence High School, I'm Mrs. Whetsell with Independence High School, I'm trying to get a hold of the name, that kind of thing. It started the conversation.
Yeah. Really good stuff. Wow, how exciting. Do you like it out there as much as you seem? Not the weather, not the pool, but I mean the job.
I do.
You just
I
seem
do.
like you're loving it.
The first year was very overwhelming. But I cannot sing the praises of my team, my administration, the whole district. Really, they know it's a challenge, and they've got those resources in place for us. They're like, okay, we know no one's ever run up against this before. How can we help you? That kind of thing. So we have great
So good.
and things like that. So
really neat. All right, well, enough of your dumb job.
okay, yeah.
Let's move on to you personally, because part of and now it's really good to talk and hear how a different school is handling some of the challenges we're facing in Bellevue, of course, but we're also giving people a chance to benefit from each other's personal experience. And as you know, and I sent you the outline, you've caught a couple of videos. We're using this acronym INSPIRE to look at 5 areas that we can all be intentional about focusing on to make sure we're not drifting in any of them, and we're keeping ourselves alert and challenged. And so we use the SPIRE part of INSPIRE, and the S stands for spiritual, which is really how are you making sense out of this in a bigger picture? What are you doing to kind of ground yourself, keep from being overwhelmed by your explanation to yourself?
Yeah, and I made some notes here. So yeah, basically, when this whole thing started to go down, of course, you hear feedback from all over, the chatter from people's opinions, their fears start to roll out. So basically, I just had to rely on the fact and the faith that I believe that everything that's put in front of us is there as an opportunity. Challenges are opportunities. And so, this was a chance to grow. I mean, it forced us into growth. And I just kind of had to keep that faith as far as, I'm never going to get anything I can't handle. How am I going to handle this? And it became not so much of a fear anymore, but more of a problem to solve. And that kind of sparked, that optimism I was able to then spread, I became the calm for other people who were kind of freaked out. Students didn't understand the virus, colleagues didn't understand what was happening. And since I was calm, I was able to kind of, really embody that spirit of being calm and being that island,
That is so good. That's really, really good. And I love the idea of viewing everything as an opportunity as opposed to a burden. I think it's a brilliant way to frame the situation that we're in. How about physically? What are you doing to take care of yourselves physically? Eating and drinking, drinking water and spending a lot of time staying active. How are you handling that?
Yeah, I love that phrase, frame the opportunity. So, that first couple of weeks, I'm not going to lie, this is my little meeting here. There was a lot of stress eating the first couple of weeks. Physicality, everything was kind of in panic mode there for a little bit. The stress was up here, and logical thinking was kind of gone. But since then, physically, it's really come down to keeping my body healthy, and that means choosing good fuel for it. Now I'm back to choosing good foods for my family and myself, drinking plenty of water, staying away from those little treats like sodas and stuff like that, as much as possible, right? I got water, and I've got my kombucha, I got all my healthy stuff. Just staying away as much as I can. Like I said, the first couple of weeks, it was a little bit of a dumpster fire with the diet. And out here, it's so nice. Getting outside, just getting some sunlight on your skin, just breathing some fresh air a little bit every day. If you can, go for a 20-minute walk. If it's just down the road and back, you know what I mean? Now they've closed all our trails and our mountains and stuff around here, so we can't even go there right now because we're getting overcrowded. But I still get out and walk the pets or my own children for a little while. So just like you said, framing the possibilities. Just look around you, get some sun, get some fresh air, do what you can with the diet.
Good. I have to say, I didn't call it stress eating. I called it convenience eating. Like,
There
it
you
was
go.
just that it was easier to get to. It wasn't that I was stressed, of course
No,
not.
I
I
was full
wasn't
on eating
eating
my
for
feelings.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. All right. The I is for intellectual, keeping our brains engaged. Now, of course, most teachers I've talked to are not having any trouble with this because they're having to get super creative and come up with new ways of dealing with things. How about you?
Okay, so I will second that. Yeah, learning new ways to do this, doing research, outside of the box. I am a team leader for some of the math teachers, so I am the head geometry teacher here. So it was kind of up to me to come up with ideas of how do we want to do this. But luckily, reaching out to team members, we got to kind of collaborate and throw in our ideas, but a lot of research. But then now that that's over, intellectually, I'm just working on interests, finding out new ways to, expand the mindfulness training that I do, finding new and creative ways to entertain my own two children here, on a daily basis. The books were suggesting started to come in, Amazon to the rescue.
Yep.
So
Awesome.
I'm starting to read. I'm chasing those YouTube things down the rabbit hole, those interests, finding a topic and falling down the TED Talk rabbit hole, I guess you could say.
Because we can these days. Yeah. We have a little time to do that.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. The R is relational, and that's just staying connected. And how are you doing with staying connected with people?
At the beginning, the first part was just the collaboration virtually with my team at school, the administrators and my colleagues, my other teachers. That we all got to kind of have those minutes of we first get together, spend the first 5 minutes of any meeting just kind of expressing ourselves and our feelings and our thoughts before we got down to business, that kind of thing. So we're a good tight group of friends, so it was really great to be able to have those conversations. Outside of that, I mean, being cooped up with your family for extended periods of time, I love them. I do. But you had to kind of learn how to communicate because it's different. Even though we live together, I don't think we've ever spent 4 weeks staring at each other before. So those kinds of what does it look like to fight fair? To have those conflicts, but not be able to, we have to resolve this now. We can't, so things like that. Relationally, finding those ways to just try to put that positive foot forward. Like, how can I make someone else laugh today? Or what are those random acts of kindness you can figure out in a day? And just, like you said, once you get a handle on it, it spreads. I think now that we're in week 4, I guess for us, that it's
us too.
Yeah, so we're, we've really, it's funny, it's kind of becoming a new normal. I guess they say it's 21 days to make a habit or whatever, right? And it's like, it's kind of becoming a new normal, which is good and bad. Like, I still have to remember that, going to the mailbox, I have to actually maybe put on some real clothes to leave the house. But, oh yeah, I can't just be like this all day. But yeah, so just finding those ways to connect any way you can, make someone laugh, and say thank you when someone thinks of you and sends you share something on Facebook that makes you giggle a little bit, that kind of thing.
Good stuff. All right, the last one, and I always feel like by the time we get to the last one, we've covered it in all the other 4, and maybe that's the point, that in order for us to manage our stress, when stress always carries with it a lot of emotions, anxiety and sadness and anger and frustration, all those kinds of things. But in terms of your just the emotions you've been facing, you've talked already about things that you've done, even talking with your team about how you guys are doing. Anything else you want to add about emotional stuff?
I mean, from a personal standpoint, I do a lot of journaling. So what I noticed was there was almost a trek through the grieving process. There's a lot of stuff we're missing out on. I'm grieving the loss of normalcy. I am so upset that, you know, my seniors who I love aren't having a prom and aren't getting a graduation. You know, people that I know are seniors in college. So there's a lot of, that's what I'm dealing with a lot with my students too, is emotionally dealing with their, wrapping their head around that they're kind of getting cheated in their minds out of a lot of stuff. So how to deal with, you know, their anxieties and sadness and grief over losing what they've been working for. And a lot of these are first-time graduates, you know, in their families. And so there's that. And then personally, I mean, when you're cooped up, you know, building that self-awareness to, sometimes your mind starts to get that self-talk, like you start to get fearful or anxious. And so just emotionally trying to stay on top of recognizing when you're starting to have some of those, you know, maybe negative self-talk or irrational thoughts, you know, how to just say, okay, wait a minute, you know, you're taking this a little farther. You're now down the road, and that's not what's happening. So, you know, worrying about my own kids' education and where they're going to be, you know, my students, what's next year going to look like. You start to pre-panic, you know, and I'm not one to let a good crisis go to waste, but, you know, you kind of have to take it one step at a time.
I love the term pre-panic. That might be one of my favorite terms I've heard in this entire process. That's really good. This is amazing stuff, and it is so good to see your face and hear your voice, and I appreciate your energy. You were well loved in Bellevue, and I'm sure you're well loved there as well. Our last question is always this: what's one thing you're learning about yourself or about life that you think is going to make you better when you come out of this? When we come out of it?
Oh my gosh. You know, full circle, kind of going back to the beginning, that by taking the mental stance that everything's an opportunity, I've already taken so much out of this experience. You know, I have learned how to teach remotely with some success. You know, I've developed relationships with my students that were good to start with, but are completely on a different level now, you know. So I'm optimistic to say that, you know, when we get to go back and when this all comes up, like, it doesn't feel like there's anything we can't handle at this point, you know. So
that is an amazing attitude, and one that we will all do well to embrace, because the challenge has made all of us stronger if we'll accept that and nurture those strengths. And that's what we've been working on so much. Well, this has been amazing. It is so good to see you, and we just appreciate the work you're doing and appreciate what you did for Bellevue, and wish you the best of a happy Easter, such as it is. There probably won't be much of an Easter celebration anywhere around except in our own little hearts and houses, but I still hope, and I hope the weather treats you well over the weekend.
You know, I hope hopefully it warms up soon, because we're all
yeah, so
I'm so glad those emails started going back and forth. I'm glad we could set this up.
Yeah, no, this was really good. Hey, have a great weekend.
You too. Bye now.
Wasn't that great? Although I have to admit, I'm still experiencing a little bit of jealousy about the mountains I can't see viewed from the pool I can see. As I sit in my living room looking at the snow falling, that was kind of a definite difference. I really loved what Leah said about looking at every challenge not as a burden, but as an opportunity for growth, and how she's been able to use that to become a source of stability and peace for friends that she cares about. That is some amazing stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you have a wonderful Easter. Next week, I have a really super special guest that won't be familiar maybe to some of you, but for sure the teachers will be acquainted with my guest on Monday, and I know you're going to enjoy that. I'll leave it as a secret so you can kind of look forward to it. Have a wonderful Easter, and we'll see you next week. Stay strong, get stronger, and bless your family.